aspirants, today we have with us our esteemed faculty, Colonel Sunil Brijkrishan, who will share his insights about GEPIWAT process at SIBM Pune.
Hello friends. The million-dollar question that plagues the mind of every young MBA aspirant is, what do the interviewers actually look for in a candidate? This is a question which can be answered in so many different methodologies. A lot of people would talk of your academics, a lot of people would say how much of work experience does he have, a lot of people would say what is his demeanor like, some would look at it from the body language. Let me put it very succinctly to you. I am talking of me as an interviewer with a fair amount of tajurba. If you look at 1.5 lakh people who have gone through me into greener pastures, and if I have decided to select a particular person, what was that X factor which made me look at him as a worthy candidate? And I'll share this with you. To be very honest, friends, my interview begins the moment the candidate knocks on the door and says, "May I come in, sir?" or "May I come in, ladies and gentlemen?" and he enters. The time he takes to walk from the door up to the chair, which is opposite us, where the interview takes place, is enough for me to have made at least 40 to 50% of my decision. What am I looking for? I'm looking at his overall demeanor. The way he walks, the way he smiles, the way he greets us, the confidence that he shows on his face, the josh which is exuding from him. I've already decided it doesn't take long, and that's where my experience helps. Thereafter, he sits opposite me or opposite us as a panel, and while the rest of them may gruel him on all his academics or what have you, what do I as a person look at? The academic part, of course, it will be used by others to grill you. But if I am going to look at the candidate from the final selection point of view, I'm going to look at this man. How does he fit into the scheme of my things today and 2 years down the line? Why do I say 2 years down the line? Me selecting a candidate today only to find no company selecting him 2 years later means two things. Number one, that he wasn't the right guy. And number two, I wasn't the right interviewer. There was a problem at both ends. I want to specify and just make this very clear, friends, that when I look at a candidate, of course, I see the positive in him, but I also look at him that after he goes through 2 years of a grueling grind in a management institute, filled with activity, academic, co-curricular, social and what have you, assignments, tests and you name it, end of the day, when the winters come and it's time for his selection by a corporate, what am I looking at is how quickly will this corporate guy say, I am looking at this man as a candidate. If my mind tells me that the corporate is going to look at him and say, he's the man I'm looking at, I will select him today because I'm looking at him 2 years hence. So what am I really looking at? I'm looking at his demeanor, I'm looking at his body language, I'm looking at his josh, I'm looking at his excitement, I'm looking at his passion. His body must exude passion, that if anybody has to get in, it's got to be me. Ladies and gentlemen, we as interviewers have a huge choice. If not you, 10 more. But what about the candidate sitting opposite me or sitting opposite us? If it's not him, well then he has got to try it all over again. So we have the plus, we have the edge, we have a choice. The candidate does not. So how does the candidate ensure that he's the candidate we're looking at? By just following the little norms that I tell you. Your body language, your demeanor, your smile, how tall you are even if you're not, the way you greet an audience, the way you respond to a question, the way you take your time for that fraction of a second and don't blurt out, don't give unnecessary information, speak when spoken to, answer what is asked, and do it pleasantly. Leave the interview panel happy. Leave with a smile. Believe you me, half the battle is won. The second aspect, which is the cause of a lot of hassles or problems to candidates, is a scenario where a candidate who comes up for an interview fresh out of college, that is fresh out of graduation, has never stepped into a corporate world ever, has no ideas what corporates look at and what they look for in people, he's always apprehensive as to what firm ground is he going to be on when he faces an interview panel. My little advice to freshers is, friends, you always start afresh. Everybody does not have work experience, part of his academics or part of his life at the very start. There is always a time when you have to make that first move. So when you come up for an interview fresh out of engineering college, you are somebody who is a fresh leaf out of a book. I would look at a fresher as somebody who looks at things as a challenge and says, wow, I'm here in a domain, in an area, in a place where there are people who are also going to compete with me and me with them, who probably have some tajurba, to use the right word. I don't have it. It doesn't matter. What matters is your ability to prove to me, the interviewer, that I am as good or as better than anybody else. So what if I don't have work experience? I'm a fresher, I need to start. I always tell a lot of people, freshers when they join, after a year, they're no longer freshers. Which means a year later, that man has 1 year of work experience. But where did you start from? Right from the grassroots. It just doesn't matter. We are looking for people who have the metal in them. We are looking for people who have the go in them. It doesn't matter whether you have work experience or you don't have work experience. I look at freshers from a very, very different perspective. I believe if anyone can, the fresher can, provided he believes that he can. Having talked about the fresher's attitude in front of an interview panel, now let's look at a different perspective. We'll now talk of somebody who has finished his basic fundamentals in graduation, be it engineering, be it commerce, be it BBA, whatever, has had the exposure of a corporate for a year, year and a half, 2.5, 3 years as the case may be, which means when he steps into a room where he is likely to be faced by a panel, the panel now looks at this particular person in a very different manner, quite obviously. In the initial stages, I told you how I would look at, or how would a fresher look at me or me to him from a different perspective. But here now we are talking of somebody who has the work experience. Is there a difference? Of course there is. I am in no way comparing a fresher with a work experience and vice versa vis-a-vis selection. There are institutes who probably look at these two aspects differently with preference to one over the other. But I am going to talk to you about these two aspects separately. The fresher bit we have already covered. Now talking about the work experience guy. What is the difference? First and foremost, that this man has a little bit of experience probably at a shop floor if you're in a manufacturing unit. Probably in a beautiful avenue and area if you're in an IT industry. But you have been exposed to subordinates, you have been exposed to superiors, you have been exposed to peers. You have met a few challenges, you have spent a few sleepless nights, you have a little more knowledge about what you were doing. Now if I were to look at a person with this background, obviously I would raise the bar a little more. For the simple reason that my questions to him would be based on, what would you do if scenarios. If you were faced up with a case in your organization, how would you handle it? Here I am looking at a little bit of knowledge only because this person has spent a few of his precious years post his graduation in an organization. We raise the bar a little more, friends. It only puts you onto a stronger wicket provided you are able to substantiate all that is asked of you only because the interviewer is now looking at a candidate who has some experience. We will probably handle you slightly differently. In no way does it make you superior to the guy who's come prior to you without experience or make him inferior to you at all. But obviously, because you have been there and done that, I expect maybe a tad more. So my questions will be probably a little more pointed. The interview could be a little more grueling only because of that little work experience. Thank you.